Hello there, and welcome to today's webinar, A Playbook for the Complex, Executing Your Conference Plan. My name is Felicia Asiedu. I'm a Director of Marketing here in Europe at Cvent, and I'm joined today by my partner in crime, Alyssa.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. I'm actually in Washington, D.C., so not quite in Europe.
I love these global vibes we're giving. So we have a lot of content for you today, so we are going to pretty much dive right in, but what we do want is for you to get interactive with us. So if you have any questions at any point throughout this, please do use the Q&A feature to ask as many questions as you like. We will answer them throughout, and we will also have a space for questions at the end. There will be also a poll, so that polling feature is right there next to the Q&A feature. So when the time comes, I will direct you to it. But for now, let's dive straight into this and look at what is a complex event.
We'll take it from there. Sorry, Felicia, I was delayed on moving the slides per usual. We're live, everyone. Can't you tell? That's the best part of this, right? Anything can happen with a live event. So yes, to what Felicia just said, let's start with some definitions of a complex conference here. Complex conferences exist in a wide range of industries. So no matter where you're joining us from today, complex conferences exist from where you're joining us. We see those in mature organizations. We also see them as those in associations, in addition to nonprofits. The host organization is more often than not a market leader with a large customer or member base. Oftentimes they're looking to increase adoption or maybe to up-level their brand awareness. It's often seen as a thought leadership opportunity and really helps to solidify that space or that presence as a dominant force in whatever your industry you're representing. Some common names that you might see here on the screen, user conferences, we see world tours, advisor conferences, dealer conferences, investors, oftentimes conventions, trade shows, or congresses are kind of synonymous with that complex conference. And then some of those kind of key defining attributes, just to put some parameters around it. Oftentimes we see these being around 1,000 to 1,200 attendees and beyond, upwards of 20, 50,000 individuals coming to a location. But certainly when it gets over that 1,000 threshold, it becomes complex. Oftentimes that requires, with so many individuals coming, different attendee types, 10 plus is what we've deemed here. That also comes with a lot of sessions complexity, 50 plus types of individual entities within your agenda that is spread across a multi-day or multi-tracked format. So I'll pass it to you, Felicia.
Awesome. So with that definition right there, we have a question for you, just to start with, and I've just launched the poll. So based on the definition, how many complex events would you say that you run each year? And you could say none, you're just getting started and want to know what we're going to talk about here. Or you have this one flagship event, or you have multiple events every year. So just going to let those responses come in. And I'm going to let you know, whilst those responses come in, we're going to be talking to you about our complex conference, our most complex conference that we have, which is Cvent CONNECT. For those of you that know, that conference has around 3,000 attendees in person, 7,000 virtual attendees over 3.5 days, and so on and so forth. There's, so much that happens at Cvent CONNECT. Many of you might have been to Vegas. This year we're in San Antonio, so it's all brand new. And then we also have a sister conference, Cvent CONNECT Europe, which happens. So taking a look back at those responses, we have quite a few.
So fascinating. It's fascinating, Felicia. It's like a perfect split. This is such a great group of individuals that we've got here. It looks like 30-30, right?
This is crazy. It's not an even split.
Yeah, what I find really fascinating, and Felicia and I were talking about this before the webinar even started, was just the testament to in-person events really being back and these larger event experiences starting to either take shape or get off the ground now in 2024. So it looks like 34% of you are ready to invest in that, or certainly get informed as you ready your organization. So just it very much aligns to the market trends that we're seeing.
Absolutely. So for those of you that have this kind of one flagship event, I think Alyssa's going to talk to you just about things like why we do Cvent CONNECT, that one big flagship event a year. What is it all for?
Yep, exactly. So Cvent Connect is equal parts user conference. It's also equal parts industry conference. So what do we really stand to gain from hosting an event like that? Well, we have multiple business objectives at stake for our complex conference. First and foremost, it's that we really do want to increase business for Cvent, and by converting more of that business to closed-won opportunities from both a very large customer segment, but also non-customers, prospects that we invite to this conference as well. We do see that just due to the inherent nature of face-to-face events and the power that it contains, Cvent Connect is one of our highest converting tactics when compared with other marketing channels and opportunities that we do have. Of course, like I mentioned, with approximately 75% of that audience being existing customers, so much of our efforts do go into retaining and renewing that business. And that translates to a lot of the programming that you see. Plentiful training opportunities. We have a lot of education, peer-to-peer best practice exchange, really for those customers. And then lastly, in order to really maintain that leading position that we're vying for in the market, we do aim to attract new organizations to our Cvent brand. And so we bring in that healthy mix of stuff that is beyond Cvent, right? Big name speakers, and years past, we've had large airlines, hotel brands representative. We've also had large production, women in leadership, just a healthy mix of things that are non-Cvent, just to position our brand outside of just an event technology space. But that's enough of me talking about Cvent Connect. Let's take a quick peek at this video that we have to tell our audience story and the energy around this event.
So there you have it. That is Cvent Connect. And we want to showcase this to you, not because we're like, hey, you should come to Cvent Connect or check it out. You should, but it's much more, this is the event that we feel that we can relate to you with. If you're thinking about that multi-day, multi-track, complex conference, this is how we feel we can relate to you. So we're going to show you today's agenda and sort of talk through our event to help relate to your event, like we said. So number one, the thing we're going to talk about is teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. We're going to show you how our team works together and suggest ways that your team can work together to run the event. And we work together not only, like I said, with Cvent Connect, but also the sister conference, Cvent Connect Europe. I say it takes a village to raise your event baby right here. So this is, we can relate when we're sharing baby pictures with each other, sharing pictures of our event. So secondly, we're going to talk about that pre-event experience, how you have to think about your current business objectives and the current climate to drive your content strategy, and it informs your production strategy for your event. So we're going to remind you, it might feel like you've done this event before, for those of you that said, you have that one event a year or multiple, but really you've never done this event before in this current climate. It's changing every single year. So you really have to think about how you're approaching content strategy will drive your production strategy today and not rinse and repeat like you may have done before. 3, we're going to talk about during the event, so the attendee engagement, which is rapidly changing, how people interact with each other and how attendees interact with you. and their expectations on site and the way that they're using technology whilst consuming your content. You know, the noise factor out there is out of control. They're TikToking whilst they're consuming content. So, you know, even whilst you have your attendees at your event, are they truly captivated by what you're offering? So we're going to look at that. And finally, we're going to look at that rear view mirror, the story of what happened. What is the data telling us? You know, what are your attendees saying about your event? And in that post-event analysis, you know, what's the difference between your attendees turned up fine versus, oh my gosh, you just had to be there? You know, what feelings are you really leaving your attendees with? So that's what we're going to run through. So Alyssa, get us started.
Let's talk about that village, right? Felicia just mentioned this, but not only is Cvent Connect that conference, it's really also our largest marketing campaign. And it really does take many people to organize this. So for those that are just thinking about getting started with a large, complex conference, think about how you're going to mobilize your organization around that. Our meeting and event team is organized into 3 pillars of opportunity. So our event design and execution, for anyone that listens to our podcast, little plug here, that is Paulina's team. So it is the team that's responsible for the program planning, the event logistics, the budgeting, the sourcing, all of those experiences and activation, and ultimately the execution on site. That is kind of our core kind of traditional planner persona, if you will. We also have our event marketing and analytics team. I have to say I was actually a part of founding this team here many moons ago, but this is the group that is aligned to our promotions and our audience generation. You know, for that broader output of the event, we integrate that with our marketing and our sales efforts in the form of Marketo and Salesforce integrations for that prompt follow-up. So it's everything from getting the audience there, but making sure we have audience throughput to impact business value at the end of the day. We also have our event tech and operations. This is our newest team. They partner together and work in parallel with the other two groups to each phase of the planning lifecycle to map and ensure the right technology is assigned to any given experience requirement, whether that is an on-site requirement, whether that's an audience promotion requirement. They really are our technology experts. I will say concurrent to this year-long effort of planning to Cvent Connect, this team also produces an additional 280 tier 1, 2, and 3 events. So Cvent Connect is not the only thing that they are juggling with throughout the year. Those also come in multi-formats, virtual, hybrid, and in-person events.
So it's a lot to do. And if they spent all their time doing that by themselves, I think they would quite frankly throw it back at us and tell us they're not doing it anymore. So what happens in Cvent is that although the meetings and events team are at the core of the planning and execution process, the partnership with all the other teams across the organization is essential to make sure that really our conferences don't stand alone. They are end-to-end campaigns. You know, we take a lot of support from our sales team when it comes to the promotion and the marketing of the event. But the event marketing team also support the sales team to understand how to go about doing that. We have one of our event marketers, Robin, who, when I say she rah-rahs up the sales team, I really mean it. You know, you can't be on a call with Robin without leaving and fully understanding exactly what the goal is, you know, from number-based goals to on-site goals. You know, she really makes it super clear. And then they support us. In turn, we support them. So it's a really nice partnership that we have here at Cvent. And we would encourage you, you know, if you are that person that sat there saying, I am my team, I literally am all those things that Alyssa pointed out on that slide. How do you expect me to do this? I would say really rope in, you know, your operations team, HR, love to get involved. And I remember when I was sitting in sales many moons ago, I really wanted to work in marketing, to be honest, and here I am. So whenever something came up to do with events or something I could support with, I bit off marketing's arm to join. And I have people here in my organization that do that too. You know, I won't say too much because they're trying to move into my team, but you will probably find people in your organization who want to do that too. So don't underestimate the power of your wider team.
I love that. Like truly paints the vision for that village, right, Felicia?
Yeah.
All right. So let's shift gears, just kind of giving you a high level overview of how that team executes a plan. And how it kind of comes together in a timeline format. This campaign really begins with the launch of that website and registration. Of course, our event design and execution is working months prior to that, perhaps even years prior to that, negotiating the space and the venue requirements, and then ultimately translating that into that event registration build, which is ready for launch. This past 2023 event included an approximate 9 months in campaigning, so promotions, but we've seen anywhere from 12 months to 3 months as a typical promotion timetable, depending on that audience, your travel needs, and those barriers to registering. So the harder the barriers, the harder it is to get to your conference. If there's flights involved versus if it's a local, the longer the promotion cycle. Those are just kind of some key things to be thinking about. You can also see in this view how some of those other major attendee-facing technologies noted in the blue are also included in this timeline, and they really assist the audience from getting from registered to engaged leading up to the event, to booking their sessions, preparing them for travel, getting their hotel booked, all the way up to their mobile app engagement, leading up days, a handful of days prior to the event. Of course, our own strategic planning really informs these technology experiences months in advance. So that's what we're going to talk about, really a lot of the activities that we're performing in the pre, during, and post-event phases of our event.
Absolutely. So the very first thing we always say whenever you're looking at, that pre-event experience is to decide really and truly, what is it that you need to build? We always say start with those objectives. And the best way to think about those objectives is to think about your in-person attendee drivers and your virtual attendee drivers. If you know that, your audience has a need to build those deeper relationships, understand more about each other, have those serendipitous birds of a feather moments where they're like, I'm new too. Hey, it's good to bump into you at the water cooler. Then you're going to need to put on an in-person event of a particular size with different areas that will encourage your attendees to really do what it is that ultimately you want them to do, but what they want to experience. That's the biggest thing right there. And then thinking about that virtual experience, I was asked just the other day, how do I know how many sessions to do for my virtual audience? How do I know what kind of experience to build? Well, kind of just ask them. And then you'll understand that they have a limited amount of time. So you don't need to duplicate every single session that you're running for your in-person audience, for your virtual audience. You can build an experience that's for them. So here we've just put a few of these attendee drivers, and you'll see this on our slides throughout the deck today. There are lots of things for you to think about. That's the playbook element of this. I'm not going to talk you through each one of them, but when you get these slides after this session, you can go back and look at, well, actually, are my virtual attendees driven by budget or time, or do they want to learn? What do they want to do? And that helps you to build what you see here, this shared experience where you can curate. Typically, we know that a complex event will have what we call virtual elements. So you can curate the right elements for each part of this audience, whether it's through webinar after the event, or if it's, streaming certain sessions during the event. You'll know exactly what to build if you can figure out what your audience wants rather than what you're trying to sell. It's a really big thing. It's really hard to do because you've got people tapping on your shoulder telling you what to do, but really try and listen to your audience, I would say, is one of the biggest pieces of advice we could give.
So let's talk about the in-person audience, shall we, Felicia? Let's kind of dive into what that in-person experience really looks like, and how, the actual design of the event is informed by our goals, also mixed with those attendee drivers that Felicia just outlined. So you can see this rough footprint of our floor plan on screen. And what shapes this plan is really multifaceted. So first, of course, Cvent's business objectives are really at the forefront. We outlined those already. Oftentimes thinking about retention, expansion of new opportunities, whether that's upselling new products, cross-selling new products into new buying centers, if you will. We measure that in both direct and attributed revenue at this conference. I assume many of you who are on the commercial side of industries might be thinking about things in terms of direct and attributed. But it's also hard to negate our contractual obligations. We have room night minimums that we must meet. There are F&B minimums that we must meet, which also impact and inform our attendance projections. So just because we say we want 100,000 registrations doesn't mean that we can actually do that, right? So a lot of what we negotiate is what we're holding ourselves accountable to. And that's ultimately how we end up carving the space as well, from how much we need for general session versus how much we need for our breakouts versus our trade show. All of those things are goal dependent, and it helps kind of set this tone for the in-person event design. And like Felicia mentioned, of course, we're looking at those attendee drivers. We are informed heavily by data we capture in pre-event surveys. Pro tip, definitely survey your audiences before you start thinking about your conference experience, but also what we know to be true about in-person versus virtual audience needs. There are some assumptions that are made. This can then determine what those production needs might look like and where we can maximize the value of those AV investments for each of those audience segments. What makes sense to be an in-person only versus what makes sense to have a live stream component. We're going to get into that production strategy in just a few moments.
Right. And before we do that, let's look at those virtual drivers. So we'll pick out a few. So reach is typically the most common virtual driver. You want to get further and wider than you can if everybody's coming to your event on site. So that is something that is an obvious reason for you to design your virtual event. But don't, again, like I said, don't think you have to duplicate it. They are a totally different audience from the people that are on site. So you should be curating your event for that virtual audience. Secondly, we think about things like accessibility. And I'm not just talking about, disability within accessibility. I'm talking about just enabling those that just can't come. They can't fly for some reason. Maybe they have restrictions on flying or how many people they can fly out to your event. So that kind of accessibility, but also those that simply can't get out. So think about how you are providing a way for people that can't come to consume your content and make it as easy as possible for them to navigate your site if they are going to come to your event. Really the impact of having that virtual event is to offer some level of exclusivity alongside inclusivity for those people that are coming. We often do these little sneaky backstage things for people that are in the virtual audience that the in-person people just can't have. So really have to think about what you are designing for your virtual audience.
Love that. Great point, Felicia. Let's also talk about those promotions and the sales enablement strategy. I know Felicia kind of covered this lightly at the beginning. But this is a lot of energy that goes into the pre-event phase of the complex conference. At Cvent, we leverage an omni-channel approach to our event marketing strategy. When you're trying to get that number of registrations over the 1,000 mark, it needs to be omni-channel. So ours is a healthy mix of traditional promotional emails. Of course, we know email is still a high converting tactic, but we also deploy paid social, targeted ads, and our sales and client services teams are huge for us. Like I mentioned, we typically launch our registration and that website 6 to 9 months out before that event. But in that timeline, we heavily prioritize the in-person promotional efforts to ensure those guarantees are met. We kind of shift gears around 4 to 5 weeks out from the event when we prioritize virtual promotions. We think that we've shored up or we've met our goals, and we really want to broaden the reach and provide that inclusive experience for anyone who may not be able to travel to the actual conference space. One thing to note is that all of these tactics that we leverage, our sales teams are responsible for 50% plus of the registrations for the event. So it's a really strong account management strategy and relationship that we have with our meetings and events team that targets our specific users and our customers. So strongly encourage getting your customer or your member facing teams equally excited about this team is really incredibly important. And it includes equipping them and being their ally with toolkits, discount codes, of course, delivering the value of what's in it for them. Oftentimes that means just more business and more money in their paychecks, because that is ultimately the goal of this conference, is to generate that money, which has direct impact on the individual. Lastly, I will mention, and many organizations do have kind of a channel or partner or some kind of broader universe that exists beyond just your organization. We activate those companies as well. Targeting some of our largest partners. In our instance, it's hotels, industry suppliers, sponsors, or even agencies that we work with. And we enable them to invite their customers to attend as well.
Perfect. So we're going to just take a look at the content strategy for your event. So, I used to be a content marketer. That was my role. So I would always say, content is king. But actually, looking here, it is. But you have to look at why. What is the purpose? So we've got objective here, business objective, we always say, and that helps to help you find your audience and make sure that you are, drawing in the right audience to help you meet your business objectives. But sometimes I have a tendency to flip these around and kind of be like, well, who do we exist for? Why are we doing this? And having that real audience first strategy. So depending on how you feel, you could flip these two around, but either way, you need to figure out your why. And that's what both of these first sort of chevrons are doing, helping you to figure out Why are we making this? Who are we making it for? And then thinking about your campaign. So if you are an event planner that you work kind of exclusively with your event team, go to the marketing team and say, what campaigns are you running this year? How can this event, feed into that? And so that we are extending the life of your campaigns so that we can create content and then shape your production strategy and then collect the data to figure out, did that work? That should be how you're thinking about your content strategy for your events. There will be some net new, and that's fine, but they should still be shaped by the objectives of your organization so that you have net new content on site that then actually is going to go and work into a campaign that will run beyond your event. So everything should be kind of cyclical. And even though this is this linear line that we've drawn here that you'll see in your slides, really and truly, it's kind of it's a flow that you can then work into a cycle for how you shape your content strategy for your events. And I did see somebody ask, will these slides be available? I know our great moderators already answered, but I want to let you know, yes, you will have access to all of these. You have it already. Feel free to download it so you can use it later. So like I said, once you've figured out, what content you're making and why, you can then help that to inform your production strategy. We call it a strategy because it is. You need to take that highly produced, high broadcast content and put it out there and give it the money and the time and the effort that it deserves. If you know that you've got celebrities coming, that's a real obvious one for I've got celebrities, they should be on the main stage. But what about that content that's just performing very, very well or is gaining interest with your audience? You probably want to up-level that. I'll give you an example. We live streamed at Cvent CONNECT Europe last year, Women in Leadership, in one of our live stream rooms. We knew it was going to be a really great session, but what we didn't know is it was going to be standing room only. It was phenomenal. And so that's going to inform my production strategy this year to say, actually, maybe I take that from a stream stage to the main stage. Like it's really going to elevate because it had that attraction that we didn't realize it had before. And then you have content that is good, it's important, but you would probably say, not quite good for live stream or main stage, and my virtual audience doesn't have that much time, so we're going to take it from in-person to on-demand and give it still its time, still its grace. We're building Events Plus where we're going to be able to put our content on afterwards, after the event, in a very, very easy way, but there will be content that naturally is going to go from in-person to on-demand. And then there's virtual only content. Like I said, is it pre-recorded content or snippets that you can give your virtual audience that are teasers for behind the scenes? We do Cvent CONNECT TV. That is just for the virtual audience. We don't give it to the in-person audience, and we make content specifically for the virtual audience. So we know, like we said earlier, we have 7,000 people that join us virtually. They need something special for them. So we really need to think about how we are creating content for them and them only. So that leads us to that during the event experience. What is happening on site during the event? And Lissa?
This is my favorite part of the whole conversation because it's the main event, right? So let's talk about what it is that we're doing with a particular focus on the technologies that are supporting and enhancing that attendee experience. So let's start firstly with that first touch point, your on-site registration and check-in. The experience that we aim to create always, no matter the event that we're hosting at Cvent, so this extends even beyond a complex conference, is one that is welcoming, it's informational, but most importantly, fast, because that is the first impression they have with your brand and your conference experience. So we really try to limit lines, especially in a complex conference. You have many, many individuals coming. The expectation is there could be a line when you're checking in. At Cvent, we aim to have no lines. Our aim is to support a 60-second or less check-in for each attendee. So this includes printing the badge with no questions needed. Swag can be strategically located at another kiosk to keep those arrivals moving. We've seen max check-ins per hour eclipsing that 1,000 people in 1 hour. So just the sheer volume that we can process through the technology is pretty monumental. We offer fast tracks for VIPs that are even faster. So even if there was some semblance of a queue, 1 or 2 individuals, those VIPs are assured no wait times. They have their own gifting and promotional products that are offered. I will say, as part of the whole on-site experience in the check-in specifically, we include differentiated ribbons and ways that attendees can make connections with one another, so that immediately when you're on site, you already are identifying kind of the birds of a feather within the different audience segments. Our lanyards have different, we use purple and teal and blue, as you can tell from our slides and our branding, to differentiate all of those different audiences. I would also mention that this is the first data point that we capture on site that starts to build out that robust picture of your interests and your needs, your likes or your dislikes within that conference space. So let's dive deeper about tracking that experience throughout. So they're at your event. Now what, right? How do we build that understanding of what they did, what they liked, what they didn't like, what you then need to offer next to them in reaction to that? Cvent handles this in two ways, both Cvent Connect and our technologies. We do this in an active way. We can also do this in a passive way. With active attendance tracking, we're leveraging two different types of technologies to understand what that attendee does throughout the event. The first is NFC tap and go, where attendees can tap their badge. You can see that picture, the first little iPad there. Attendees can tap that badge to self-scan. They're kind of self-checking themselves in. And then we also offer a more traditional session scanning. You've probably done this before, which contains more access control capabilities. So it's this sort of data collection you're able to know and share exactly what's happening in real time and in each room, and leverage those insights for that post-event follow-up informed by what the individual actually did on site. Now let's talk about the other technology option here for attendee tracking. We can do this passively through RFID technology. Now, RFID tech provides a more frictionless, kind of always on tracking option, if you will. So the benefits of this are notably what's happening and how many bodies are in each time and in each room. This is more of a volume play. Some metrics you might care about, trends by space. You could start to see high traffic times versus low traffic times, booth interests, or perhaps even buying signals. Passerby traffic at a specific exhibitor booth is commonly a need for the RFID trusses. You could also look at entry or exit trends. What were those times where people were leaving versus coming and going? Duration, how long somebody stood at a booth. Meal tracking is an area of opportunity. And then, of course, post-event data aggregation for your agenda planning. So that's kind of at a high level what's possible with attendee tracking. Let's talk about attendee experience when it pertains to engagement, Felicia.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing here, and I'm glad it's the title of this slide, is plan for engagement. Alyssa just said it's a volume game. Most of your, highest tier 1 complex events are lots of people. And if you do not plan for engagement, you're probably not going to get the engagement that you want on site. So, having that in-session chat, the irony is not lost on me today. Anyone that wants to roll their eyes with me, go for it. But in-session chat would be amazing. Providing those points of polling, Q&A. I have seen your questions coming in, and to be honest, it's really helpful even seeing those questions come in, because it's helping us to make sure we can try and answer them as we go along, as we're doing our session. So even if your questions aren't being answered right away, don't think that they are not helpful, and they would be helpful for your attendees if you're giving them that opportunity to continuously engage with you through all of the tools that are available to them. Having those feedback surveys, you're going to have them. So planning the surveys, one of the tips I could give you, and I know that it can cause tension, but I'm going to give it to you anyway, is standardizing your surveys. It's quite common for you to want to build surveys that are different depending on the different types of experiences that people are having across the event. But if you standardize your surveys, it means that you can actually take an aggregate of what happened, who did they like, why, when, where. But if they're all different, you can't really benchmark. So it's a good idea to really try and standardize your surveys. And then gamification, having those moments where you can say, hey, go and engage with this, here's a point. Go and engage with that, here's a score. And that means that you can help to drive the behavior of what you want people to do across the event, but also get some data. What did they like? What did they engage with? That will help through the gamification, and people like to win prizes, so why not? And then looking at that attendee communication, I think, people want to know what's happening. And so if you can find ways to tell them during, their apps, hey, lunch is ready, go this way. Like I say about birds of a feather meetings, first timers are all meeting in the same place at the same time on this date. People want to know. And there's no point you doing all of that program design that we spoke about earlier if you're not going to tell your attendees about it. So I think attendee communication is absolutely key. You have to think about making sure that you are giving them what they need, but also prioritize that communication. We've got this tip here, around 6 push notifications per day is the recommended maximum. So maybe don't go over that, because otherwise you move from communication to annoyance, but definitely letting people know what's happening. And here we've put, like I spoke about earlier, Cvent Connect TV, having those, small, short, snackable pieces of content for your virtual audience, if you are having one, is great. It's really fun content, and it helps to keep them engaged while maybe they're waiting for another session. It also means that you can program in networking time for your people on site, whilst your people at home or in their offices are snacking on content that they can really get into whilst your other people on site are doing other things. So I think this is great. And using your app for things like AI powered networking based on attendee profile and custom settings, really, really useful for your attendees on site. So those are our best practices around comms. And here we've got appointments and lead capture. And that's going to be, especially if you have a sales team that you need to feed, I would say, you really need to think about how you can help your attendees to make those appointments in advance. That means that your attendees know where they're going to be going, and your sales team are armed and ready to take those appointments and to give them the information that they need. And we know lots of our larger complex conferences are there to drive sales ultimately. Even though it might not be the main thing your attendees want to do, it will be a point in their day. So being able to capture when those moments of interest come, ask the questions, and then feed that back to your sales team after the event, awesome and super important. It means that when your attendees go home and then they are called within 2-3 days, maybe that should be the maximum, just recommendations there. It means they have a really engaging and good conversation around what they spoke about on site. So, don't be shy to ask questions. If that's what they've come there for and that's what they want to engage with, they will answer those questions because they want to have good follow-up conversations after the event. So with that,
segue. So let's talk about what happens after the event. We've captured all of this data. Your attendees have had, hopefully, an amazing experience. What do we do with that information after the fact? So what would any conference be if we didn't mention a little post-event feedback, right? And the importance of surveys. I think this is commonplace for every event planner. But for Cvent Connect, we're collecting feedback through surveys that are segmented by audience type. So there's a level of sophistication that is in a complex conference just based off of the sheer volume, again, of the attendees that you have. Just for an example, at Cvent Connect in years past, we've had upwards of 25 unique registration types to target with differentiated, not just surveys, but experiences overall. Cvent Surveys provides this level of insight, gives you performance with year-over-year trends, and includes that ability for more of those advanced feedback goals. So if that's something that you're curious about, that is a technology that Cvent does provide. Let's talk a little bit deeper about the attendee tracking that I covered a little bit earlier. But what do we do with all of this data after the event? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about our trade show at Cvent Connect. We touched on that briefly. Obviously, we talked about technologies like RFID and that lead capture tools. Our trade show is a combination of both external exhibitors and also our own Cvent product booths. This is pretty common in the SaaS space, top technology space. But it is a perfect area of our programming where we dive deep into those RFID insights with more of those passing insights, and also supplemented with those lead capture insights to show us behaviors by certain areas of that trade show floor. Now, things that we're keen to look at and really observe and understand and then strategize against for the following year, attendee visits by space or by booth, to understand what are the hot topics or areas of interest that we should then invest more in our marketing efforts following the event. There might be a product that is looking like it's an up and comer, right? We didn't know was going to have so much market interest. So if you think about your conference as this kind of test for a broader promotion strategy, those are the types of insights we can glean. I mentioned this already, but exit and entry trends or duration within the space. We leverage this so we can better determine what hours of the trade show floor should or even shouldn't be open. And that really helps us with the staffing in future years. When should we close this space down? Because there really just isn't an interest, or we're kind of over-programmed at a certain time. We don't need to have it open, and therefore we don't necessarily need to have it staffed. We can free up those bodies for other areas of the conference, reducing cost, right? And then lastly, that lead capture point of view. This helps us to ensure proper follow-up with individuals who, again, expressed deliberate interest with a particular product or exhibitor or sponsor, but also ensures compliance of our teams, that they're making the most of the technologies that we've invested in. So we can make sure that those lead capture devices are being used. And if they're not, we can follow up in real time with those kind of, we'll say, delinquent sales reps, right? Oh, Felicia, I'll let you talk a little bit more about those engagement scoring insights as well.
Absolutely. So we try and make those salespeople a bit less delinquent with these engagement scoring insights. What we do is we will position the leads in a way that they can follow them up without having to, delve through thousands and thousands of leads. So we will take all of those engagement points from around the event and put them together and aggregate them so that we can score the leads that we provide to our sales team, and we'll give them, hot, medium, cold. And we, as a marketing team, decide how many of those leads we'll give to the sales team at each time, depending on how many reps we have and how much they can follow up on those leads. Because to be honest, if you flood your sales team, they're going to just not do the right job and end up in a bit of a fluster. So we want to make sure that they have the capacity to attack those, really. That's a really bad word to use, but to attack the leads in the right way and in the right sequential order. And it makes it really easy then to convert those leads into the pipeline that we want to prove the ROI from the event. And that's really what you're trying to do internally in your organization, because otherwise you tend to start thinking about budget cuts and whatnot for next year because you're not getting that return on investment. So this is one of the best ways to indicate to your sales team, what they should be doing when they finish that event. And I tell you, your event attendees will love it because, like I said, we did a survey a couple of years ago and they said, I want to be followed up with. If I've had a great conversation, I want you to come back and talk to me again. I don't want to be left. So you're actually doing your attendees a favor as well as your internal organization. I'm rushing through this a bit now because I see we have lots of questions.
I know, I'm excited.
Awesome. So let's talk here a little bit about extending the event beyond your day of. And I said earlier, we are building Events Plus, which will help you to do that a lot easier. And I think we're actually launching it really soon. We launched it last year, but we're launching it for ourselves on our website really soon. So we're going to replace our event section. You'll see that coming up over time, and we're going to actually put Events Plus on there because it's going to showcase all of our video content from previous events. It's going to give you upcoming events that are coming and let you know a full calendar of what's going on with your events. So I think this is going to be one of those things that marketers are going to love, because right now they have to wait for that video content to come in, they chop it and download it and upload it. And this is just a really easy way to get that content to live on. Little tip for you, about 15 to 20% of the engagement actually happens after your live event. So I always give a funny story here. I'm going to shorten it, but I always talk about that kind of Beyonce effect or the Taylor Swift effect. It's like, they build up so much to the event. They have this stage show, they go, and I went to Beyonce last year. I was so engaged. And then she brought it out in the cinema afterwards, and I went and watched it again. And the only way that woman and Taylor Swift were able to do that is because they planned it in advance. They knew they were going to do that in advance. So you really have to think in advance, maybe I want the cinema effect of the Swifties that are going to come along to your event after it's already happened.
And I know, Felicia, you and I have talked about this, but it really is starting with that end goal in mind. Have the plan for your content strategy before you even execute your event. And we know that Beyonce and Taylor Swift's teams had this in mind. And hopefully it was Taylor Swift and Beyonce who were the ones leading the charge, right? We know they're brought down. But that's the idea, right? It's not an afterthought. It's not after the fact. You're not scrambling. You have this perfectly planned out plan, for lack of a better word, to extend the life of your event beyond, and you're not left scrambling at the finish line.
That's right.
And let's talk about just how we put a perfect wrapper on all of this amazing insight, feedback, follow-up strategy, all of these things. It's imperative that you host event post-con meetings, especially for an event of this scale. Oftentimes you can get away when you have a 100-person event with just your planning team digest. But our group holds a series of, and you can see kind of all the different meetings. You could just rip this playbook off of this slide here. But a bunch of different stakeholder meetings to capture that feedback from their point of view, but also to tout the successes of your team. We often see organizations getting budgets cut because they don't see the value. And this is your chance to really highlight and trumpet the successes of your events in a way that speaks business and not just about satisfaction. So it's really important to up-level that narrative, have that C-suite level conversation, and really prove the investment of the space so that you can continue to justify your budget year over year. So with that, Felicia and I are very excited because we can see the number of questions coming in the Q&A here. Felicia, I'm gonna take the first one. I'm gonna give you the first question, but I'll read it out loud for the audience to hear. What is the most challenging aspect you face when hosting your own user conference? Cvent Connect. What is your favorite part as well?
So I'm going to say the most challenging aspect, I think, is keeping it fresh, coming up with something new every single year that is going to delight our audience, and they're not going to feel like we've done this before. You know, we do have quite a few return visitors. We have a few first timers. First timers, I think, is actually like one of my favorite parts because they're always a little bit blown away. We put so much effort and energy into what we do, and it's, you know, like I say, multi-day, you know, multi-experience. So, but those people that come time and time again, you always need to delight, and I always want to think outside the box, and sometimes I find that really, really hard. I think we've got our team down, so all of that running around, we get it, but that, I'm going to say, is the hardest part.
All right, I like this next one, and I'll take this one too. I'd like your point of view on it as well, Felicia. Are there certain aspects of an event like this that you recommend outsourcing? I will say commonly one of the areas of the event experience is housing. That's a big one that organizations do lean into third-party agencies to support. It's kind of one of the biggest areas. There are also plentiful experiential agencies, but I will also say your investment of event technology should free up manual effort and time. So a lot of these things can help you execute quicker, faster, and at scale with less bodies on your team. So technology, I don't want to say is the only answer, but really think about that ecosystem of resourcing from third parties and also technology to alleviate some of the stress that is incurred by a complex conference.
Yeah, nice one. Should we lean into the next one, which is kind of similar? And it is, how do you determine how many on-site staff to have? How do you train and manage them?
I'll let you take that, Felicia.
Well, the thing is, I don't want to say there is no perfect number. I'm going to give you, for Cvent Connect Europe, we have about 1,000 people on site. And we have around, I would say, 150 bodies, Cvent bodies. Now, I'm not going to say they are staff. We rope them in as staff. So they are bodies. So that's kind of like I can't quick maths. Are we doing like 10 to 1, something like that? I don't think you should have that many staff. The actual core team of staff that run an event for 1,000 people is roughly about, I'm going to say 12. And those are like day in, day out. That's what they're thinking about. But everybody else is roped in some way, shape or form. So remember those two first slides we showed about the core team? On that core team, you'll have technologists, you'll have, you know, logistics, you'll have all the core thinkers. But then every other marketer is challenged with, okay, what about this aspect? What about that content? What about something else? So it's a mixed bag of numbers there, I'm going to tell you, but I think 12 kind of works. The meetings and events team will tell you it doesn't because they want more stuff. And then how do you train and manage them? This is kind of what they live and breathe. It's what they do. I would say leading up, it's over communication. We have weekly meetings where everybody starts to define roles and responsibilities. You have to do that in advance. It's absolute over communication. And sometimes we'll rope in our CEO or, you know, all the big wigs to come every now and again to just give us a rally, tell us what we're doing it for, you know, how important it is to them. that's so important for the team as well. So it helps them to go to focus, I would say.
Yeah, and I can add to that too, from a technology standpoint, we're leveraging 2 technologies that Cvent has, the Attendee Hub mobile app and also appointments. Our entire staff schedule is executed within one-on-one appointments. There are different appointment types. If you're curious about a demo around that, our sales representatives are free to do that. But staffing is one area of opportunity with the appointments tool that goes directly into the mobile app. So those are integrated technologies. You have appointments that showcase your individual schedule from a Cvent staffer's point of view versus an external attendee audience segment. And all of that is managed within the Attendee Hub experience. So we're not bringing in any other, it is not an Outlook calendar. It is not a Google calendar. It is all contained within the technologies that are leveraged by the conference experience holistically. So that has been a game changer for us, I would say, over the past 2 or 3 years, is being able to leverage those tools in a consistent and kind of standardized manner.
Absolutely. We always call it drinking our own champagne, but we're really lucky that we're able to use so much technology. So moving on to gamification, I'm going to display this question. Do you have any suggestions on how to get buy-in from leadership that view gamification as child's play and not something to incorporate into a professional event?
I have 2 points of view on this, Felicia, and I'll give my flavor before I'll have you chime in. One, gamification provides data and insights and more engagement around your event experience. The more somebody is doing across your entire event experience, gamification or the games being but one of those opportunities, you're enriching that profile with your brand, right? It's not just about I'm interested in a product, it's I'm really interested in this company through the lens of the conference. So it helps to differentiate those follow-ups after the fact with somebody who is more highly engaged, not just through gamification, but through other means as well, right? Versus those that didn't click anything, that didn't want to play anything, that were kind of what we refer to as the ghost attendee. So gamification is but one of those inputs that helps you understand their interest in you and your company. The other piece to that is gamification or child's play may not be synonymous with your audience, with your conference brand. Knowing your audience, to Felicia's point on that slide that was linear, audience and objective should dictate all of the programming and all of the technology you set within your conference experience. Just because your technology has the capability doesn't mean you are required to use these things. It really always starts with understanding your audience and their needs, how they leverage technology that should dictate the entire use of the technology. And so just shoving a game into somebody's face may not work, but really understanding them deeply and what they might need out of your conference experience should then necessitate how you would use that feature.
100%. You nailed it. Like, I have nothing to add.
Right.
Yes, right. We'll take a couple more. So I've got one here. Can you talk more about curating the shared experience during an event? The event I manage is a federal gov public meeting, debating streaming every session next year to save costs, but still need to get the content to a virtual audience. I think that's a brilliant question. It really speaks to what we were talking about earlier in terms of that production strategy. You know, we had the live stream versus in-person to on-demand versus virtual only. If there is information that has to go to absolutely everybody, well, then why don't we think about what information we can share ahead of the event so that everybody gets that information versus what is going to be delivered by the most important person in the room. So the most important person in the room obviously needs a live stream right then and there. And then we know that the cost of live stream versus in-person to on-demand is different. So are there things that you're kind of saying, hey, whilst we're having lunch, this session won't be live, but it will be on demand for you during lunchtime, or something where you can kind of just mix up and mix around what you're able to provide when. I think it's about timing, actually, with that one. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but I think what your organization will need to accept is your virtual attendees don't really have the capacity to consume content piece after content piece after content piece. Yeah. We're about to hit an hour on this webinar, and we know that we would lose you if we kept you for another half an hour. We're probably not going to answer all the questions because you only have so much time to give us. And so, you know, your chief officers need to maybe understand that actually there is a sacrifice that needs to be made.
Yeah, and I just to underscore that, going back, I know Felicia shared this in the pre-event event design, the differentiation and the motivators between your in-person attendees or audience and your virtual audience. And again, I can't stress this enough. They are the ones that tell you what they want, right? As opposed to us saying, we want to make it all available. They may not need that. So it's meeting them where their needs are and why they've chosen the virtual versus in-person component. That should dictate the investment in the production, and it will likely save you costs. The answer is in that. I also stressed this in the conversation today as well. Survey them. Do a pre-event survey. Ask them how much they need, how much they want, what is required of your organization to deliver, how they plan to participate, and that can help assure you and make you feel better about some of those budgetary cuts from the production standpoint as well.
Brilliant. So like I said, we are about to hit an hour. I don't know how many more we should go for. Should we try one or two more?
You want to make one comment about our gift card, Felicia?
I do, before we get to the end.
Yeah.
If you would like to have a demo of Cvent and take a demo, please feel free to do so. But we are also gifting. So just like gamification, we are also gifting as well. And you will receive a $100 Amazon gift card if you complete that demo with us. If you're based outside of the US, you'll get the equivalent and you'll still get gifted for doing that demo with us. So you can have a look at some of this technology we're talking about that can help you run your most complex of events. You can see in the Q&A that's being displayed as well. Please submit in the Q&A with your name included if you are interested in registering for the demo following this webinar. If you're an existing customer, you can get in touch with your account manager and we can arrange that for you. Thank you for reminding me, Alyssa. It's really good of you. I can take one fun question really quickly. I think it went away though. There was something somebody asked. Oh, where has it gone? Someone said, like, what's your most fun and engaging activation that you've done at an event? And it has gone away.
I got it.
Jumping into the ball pit, Cvent Connect Vegas was amazing. Like, it was the best photo moment. Oh, there it is. Best photo moment, and it's still doing the rounds. I always find the best photo moments that are still doing the rounds. We took people to a digital football experience post Cvent Connect Europe last year. It was amazing, and the pictures that came out of it tell you. We had DJs roaming around getting people to sing on the mic.
My favorite by far. Sucker for a group karaoke.
I think literally anything you would kind of personally enjoy, suggest it. I brought this group called So Solid to Cvent Connect Europe last year. People were telling me for days, I loved it. It was like going back to my childhood, you know, any of that, just do it, just try it, you know?
Yeah, and my point of view on this is, I'm not going to give you the answer, but where you could research, I love tapping into B2C trends and seeing how we can apply that to our business world, right? There's so much stuff. We use Taylor Swift and Beyonce as examples. Like, there's a lot of things going on in the world that will be relevant at the moment in time where you're hosting your audiences. So just because it's a business event doesn't mean it needs to be stodgy. And I know that we know this as meeting and event planners. It's all about the fun, the creativity. Like, that's really the stuff that we love to do. But for inspiration, really think about what's going on in kind of the broader world, right? Whether that's AI or Taylor Swift or things beyond. That's where we can tap in and bring that to the business world and make our events just a little bit more fun, but also a little bit more relevant.
Love it. So one more, and I'm going to take just the top one. This is the power of upvoting. I shouldn't go through. Do you have digital business cards incorporated? So within the attendee hub, we have the list of attendees for particular events. So you can turn that on, and then your attendees can choose whether they want to be visible or not. And if they choose to be visible, it means that you have access to the information that the attendee decides to put into the app. So I know I'm going to an event tomorrow. The event happens to be using our app. I've already scanned the list to see who's there. I was able to reach out to someone that I know and say, hey, we're going to be there. Let's do lunch. So you know, absolutely use that feature, and it means you can connect even better. And there's also AI connections that can happen through the app as well to suggest connections if you're not sure who to connect
Right,
with.
beyond just a business card, you're actually able to communicate, create groups, like really foster that notion of community. Like, you're doing that even pre-event, Felicia, but like, we've almost broken down the rules of a business card, right? It used to be so transactional and collecting that, and then I have to follow up after. Now, like, that follow up is happening in real time during your event experience through that mobile app. So it's twofold. You do have a record of who they are, what their title is, their company, but you also are able to communicate with them too. So it's great, the power of technology.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for staying with us for this time. Like I said, do let us know if you'd like a demo, if you'd like to reach out to participate. I can see that people are already doing it, so that's great. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being with us. What else can I say, Alyssa? I think I've come to the end.
Yeah, we'll see you again. Hopefully, Felicia and I will be back on another webinar talking about complex conferences, but perhaps something else. So if you have any ideas or things you'd like to go deeper on, go ahead and throw those into the Q&A as well. We shape our content directly based off of your feedback and your engagement. So another use case for the power of data that we're getting.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Bye.